Alright weather fans, in this video, we're jumping in the time machine and heading back to 1983. Now, if you're looking at the date above my head, don't worry, your screen isn't glitching. We are taking a historical deep dive into October of 1983. And take a look at this. These were your temperature departures from normal, looking a lot like what we just saw this past October. Now, let's jump forward to November of 83. I would say it was relatively warm, all things considered. I mean, sure, there are a few differences here and there. It's been incredibly warm across Texas this year, but the big takeaway is that you don't see a majorly cold November setting the stage for a frigid December. But then look what happened in December of 83. Boom, the switch was flipped and the cold air came pouring in. It got seriously cold, folks. And let's just move this timeline forward because we might be looking at this exact type of pattern getting ready to repeat itself this year. This was the scene in January of 83. Okay, so you can see all of this started shifting to the east. I think this looks a lot like what the weekly forecast models are starting to hint at. We see some warmer weather moving into the Pacific Northwest, and this kind of pattern could also really ramp up the precipitation for the Southwest. A setup like this typically means it gets colder in the east. And then, that year, the big February thaw was on. That, of course, would be heading into 1984. And then we roll into March. And this pattern right here, if you know anything about March weather. I mean, I know this is really long-range stuff, and right now I'm just connecting some dots. The MJO, by the way, which I'm not going to show you here, is in an almost identical phase, and credit where it's due, Joe Bastardi over at Weatherbell was the one who pointed this out. The similarities between 1983 and 1989 are just uncanny, and I'm telling you, the pattern is here, there's absolutely no doubt about it. I'm really starting to latch onto this idea, thinking, yeah, there is definitely something to watch here. This is the temperature anomaly forecast as we head into December. Okay, so you can see it doesn't look quite as intense, right? This is the control run from the European model. It's still showing below average temperatures popping up here as we get into December. And now, let's look at what's happening with the stratospheric warming, because this is another huge piece of the puzzle, happening way, way up in the stratosphere. And believe it or not, it's already underway. And the theory is that this warming process continues to unfold. And when you get this kind of intense warmth building over the North Pole, you actually split the polar vortex. That is the mechanism that unleashes the cold into North America, and it looks like a lot of that cold is also going to get shoved over into Europe. Actually, scratch that, not so much Europe, but more so over into Asia, across Siberia, and then plunging down into North America. Here's what I think is a slightly better view of the polar vortex. What you're seeing here are your 500 millibar heights. Right now, you've got a pretty tightly wound vortex spinning up there. But keep in mind, this is all happening while that stratospheric warming event is taking place, a sudden stratospheric warming event at that. And then you start to see the models picking up on it. Boom, right there. Do you see that? The polar vortex has been split clear across the hemisphere. This is what forces the cold air further south, right into North America, and also over into Siberia. And folks, that is a very cold look to me as we head into December, at least for the start of the month. And look, it stays split. Do you see this? And look at how this piece is just meandering down toward the Hudson Bay. So, cold weather is definitely on the way. A snow lover can dream, right? This is the European control model taking us all the way out through the end of the month and into January. But yeah, it's definitely picking up on and sniffing out those hints of snow. And look, I just throw that out there to show you what the long-range European weekly models are hinting at. Now, these are your temperature anomalies. And are we looking at 7-day anomalies? No, we're looking at the daily anomalies here. So let's let this play out in time, because this is also going to reveal just how warm it's going to get as we head into the weekend. I would argue we'll see some chilly air in the Northeast and then a big warm-up ahead of Thanksgiving. But our first real blast of cold is coming, though. As we head toward Thanksgiving, it's going to hit the Northwest first. It is going to snow out there, my friends. It's going to get cold. You know, some of this snow, especially up in the prairies, into parts of Canada, from Calgary eastward through Saskatchewan and Manitoba, there could be some really heavy snow there. And then that cold, that first wave, drops to the south, right? So, you've got your cold air pushing its way all the way across the country. And I was talking to some folks earlier today saying, I think it's going to turn cold in the east as well, right as we head toward Thanksgiving. And my big question is, does something funky get going along this temperature boundary? We'll have more on that in just a second. And then the cold reloads. Now, this is the European AI deterministic run. If you're following along at home, and if you're a total weather geek like me, I'm not sure I would follow a single deterministic forecast this far out. I really prefer to look at the ensemble guidance, which kind of flattens things out by showing the averages. But here we go. The cold is pushing all the way down into Texas, and look at this, right down the front range of the Rockies, all the way into Texas. This is some seriously cold weather we're talking about. Temperatures 20 degrees or more below average, like a blowtorch of Arctic air blasting from north to south, through the mid-south, and into the northeast. This is the AI model, again, taking us into the 1st of December. This is setting up some pretty cold weather here across the central United States, and with this type of pattern, I think some big storms are going to have to happen. The NAO is moving into a pretty favorable area to severe snowstorms more in this region versus the East Coast. But I'm about to show you that may not tell the whole story. Here's the European model's snowfall output through the next couple of days. Most of it is falling across Canada and the Rockies, and there's that swath of snow. I think we've really got to watch that area as we move through, like next week, across parts of Canada. Now, let's widen the view out and take a look at the entire North American continent. We'll take it day by day. I want to compare the European model to the GFS, because they are doing two very different things, which is very common when we're looking this far out into the long range. But in the short term, things look very, very similar. You have your rain expanding across the south, and it's quite windy and stormy across British Columbia with a lot of wind and snow. It's cold across Alaska too. By the way, it's going to get even colder up here over the next couple of days, through the weekend and into next week. And then we'll see showers moving further to the east as we head into, the weekend and into next week. By the way, if you are new to the channel, thousands of you have subscribed recently. We are almost at 40,000 subscribers. If you're a casual viewer just stopping by, go ahead and subscribe. Come on back and track the winter weather with us. I always love hearing from you all in the comments too. So if you missed the live stream, you can always come back and watch it at your leisure. All right, let's take you into next week because this is when it gets really interesting. It's a huge Thanksgiving travel day and weekend here in the States, and we are watching this piece of energy to the southwest start to dig some snow into the Rockies. It doesn't look extremely strong at this point, and then we see rain moving out into the plains as we head into Monday and Tuesday. Now, here's the thing. The piece of energy that's going to be moving east, the one that could potentially give us some type of storm, is still way out in the Pacific. I think we have a long way to go, but now we're entering that first wave of cold. The European model is pretty progressive, not really developing anything on the back end. The European also wants to put that snow and a blast of cold air pouring into the west. This, my friends, is the real deal Arctic blast I've been talking about, set to move into the far west as we head into the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of the month. This chill is going to dive all the way south into Texas, setting up a very warm east coast. But I'm telling you, don't turn your back on the east just yet because the energy that could potentially fuel a storm is right here. Okay, look at this brewing in the east, will you? We're talking the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and then another wave right behind it. That next one looks like it could become a classic Great Lakes cutter. Now get this energy, if you trace it all the way back around the globe, is still hanging out over Japan right now. So, it has a very long journey before it gets over to us. But here is the key difference in the GFS model. It places the system a little bit farther to the east heading into next week. This would be on Tuesday. Now, as we push into Wednesday, here comes that cold air again. The pattern is pretty similar to the European model, right? You have your snow trekking across the southern parts of Canada, and the cold air pushing south. Now, the GFS model has a well-known bias for doing this sort of thing. If I had a dime for every time I saw this when I was forecasting every single day, and guys, that is what I did for a living for a very long time, I'm telling you, I would see this pattern and say, nope, not happening. This is classic GFS stuff. I used to call the GFS the goofiest forecast system for a reason. Sometimes it just made you wonder what in the world was going on. But this is the 12Z GFS model run, dropping a potential snowstorm right here from the Appalachians into the Northeast. And if you look at the 18Z run that came out this evening, the fascinating part is that it is still there. Okay, so this is one we have to watch closely over the coming days. This would be hitting on Saturday, the 29th. Okay, I am going to go back to the 12Z run. I like it a little better because it has more data that gets plugged into it, but it is still a very interesting scenario. This pattern continues to swing through right at the end of the month. Then comes the second wave of cold air. The European model has it, and the GFS model has it. Your storm, wherever it decides to form along this boundary, is going to be in different places on different models. It is way too early to start talking about snow totals. It is far too early to talk about if it is going to snow, or where it is going to snow. What I am looking for is first, is it going to get cold? I am feeling much more confident about that. And B, this far out, are we going to actually see some type of mid-latitude cyclone develop? That is an area of low pressure developing on the leading edge of that big dip in the jet stream. I think we will see one. The big question is, where will it be? And then we turn very cold as we head into the first couple of days of December. And at that point, it is game on. You also start to lay down more snow with each passing front, and that is another factor. This creates a bit of a feedback effect that reinforces the cold. Now, let's dig into the details across the country for the next couple of days. We will start out in the west and work our way east. This is where it is going to be snowing, and this is where it is turning colder right now, heading into Thursday. We have some snow falling in the Sierra and also down into the southwest. It has been a very unsettled pattern, and I know some of you out there can certainly feel that. It is a lot cooler than it has been recently, with more precipitation spinning into Southern California thanks to this upper-level low as we head into the weekend. We will dry out some across the Northern Rockies and into the Pacific Northwest, but we are keeping that plume of moisture aimed at Washington and Oregon. And that may actually pick up as we head into next week with a stripe of snow developing, I believe, right from this area. We will see some snow in Canada dipping down into Montana, but the heaviest stuff, to me, looks like it is going to be farther north. The GFS model shows a band from Calgary eastward across the southern parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. This could put down a decent stripe of snow, and then it starts to get cold across this part of the country. Here is a look at your potential snow totals through Sunday. I am going to push this map forward and show you that stripe. There it goes, stretching across, again, parts of southern Canada and heading into next week. Now let's take a look at your temperatures on Thursday. Let's head farther east, where some strong storms are possible as we head into Thursday afternoon, especially across parts of Texas, where it is going to be really mild. I have seen the comments. Some of you are really complaining about the heat, and I totally get it. A few storms could also get strong up into Arkansas and Oklahoma as this system moves east. And for now, let's just keep it here on the GFS model, shall we? We are going to zoom in a little bit closer. I am going to let it run all the way out. It is going to get into what we call fantasy land here in just a second, but follow me on this. If you have just joined the live stream, you might want to back it up a bit. I want to be clear that it is not going to be exactly like this. But I am feeling good about this setup now through Monday and Tuesday, with the showers moving east. Then, here comes your first real rush of cold air. Will there be a little bit of snow on the leading edge? It is certainly possible. And then we turn cold, all right? This chill is going to start pushing south as we move toward Thanksgiving. Temperatures are on the way down. Now, this is where the GFS model got really weird, right? It started to develop some snow over, St. Louis and Kansas City. I mean, that would put the snow right here into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and maybe even from Louisville over to Cincinnati. Once again, this is the GFS model, which is known for doing some really weird things this far out. And then look what happens again. This would be a big storm with big snow if you could get a strong area of low pressure moving north and east. But look, the track of this thing is going to shift by hundreds of miles over the next couple of days as we get more details on how all of this lines up. All right, here's a look at your temperatures. I am going to keep it on the GFS for this too and go out in time. It is still warm across Texas and warm across Arkansas. You have another warm day heading into Friday. We will start to cool down eventually, but it is going to take a little while. These above average temperatures are going to stick around, heading right through the weekend and into next week. But here comes the real cold though. You have to see these numbers heading into the 26th. This would be on Wednesday. And folks, these are the high temperatures. Does anybody see that cold front? It is dropping south right through Texas, through Arkansas, and through Missouri. Some really cold air is starting to dive into the northern plains. We are talking overnight lows dropping into the single digits. High temperatures, whoops, I skipped a little bit too quickly there. And yes, if you are wondering if this stream is live, you bet it is. It absolutely is. Okay, here are your early morning lows on Saturday, down into the teens. And now look at this, we're starting to see below zero temperatures move in, at least according to the GFS model, as we head into the 1st and 2nd of the month. Now, I will tell you, regarding these operational model runs, I remember when I was studying meteorology years and years ago at Mississippi State, I cannot remember who said this, but it was a rule of thumb for when you look at these runs really far out during extreme events or extreme types of setups. The thinking was you should sometimes pay more attention to the single operational models than you would the blended averages like the MOS or even your ensemble guidance. I do not know if the cold will be times that times cold, but the potential is certainly showing up here, so keep an eye on things as we head into December. Alright, here is where we stand in the east. Rain is moving back into the Ohio Valley as we head into Friday after a bit of a break. Some rain and snow are also expected in the far northeast, and on the northern side of the system, it is just a little bit of snow, trying to sneak its way in. We actually had some surprise snowflakes flying around New York City today, and a big thank you to who sent that in. We also saw some snow dusting the mountains and parts of Pennsylvania overnight. High pressure is building in for the first part of the week, with rain moving back in on Monday and Tuesday. It could get cold enough for some wintry precipitation up in the northeast, and folks, this is where things get really exciting, okay? So we are venturing into Fantasyland at this point, but Thanksgiving is a massive travel day across much of the country. And here come those bands of snow trying to appear on the global forecast system model. I will show you the newest run in just a second, which is, believe it or not, even more impressive. It guides the low pressure system right up the Appalachians. Okay, so we are talking about next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, so we have multiple days to go, but just look at that potential monster. Okay, again, I think it is a fantasy storm for now. This is actually the 18 Zulu run, so let's go back to the midday run, which was a little bit colder and tracked closer to the coast. Alright, so once this system moves by, the next big question is, do you get another one that tracks further to the west? I do not know. It is too far out in time. I do not have a crystal ball, but it is definitely looking colder as we head into December. Here's a quick look at where we are going to end up on Thursday. Now on Friday, and I'm going to animate this really quickly for you, there comes that shot of cold air into the northeast, with temperatures dropping back after staying relatively warm all the way through next week. And then here comes the cold rush. You will start to feel it on Thanksgiving Day, even further south into the deep south. As we head into Saturday and Sunday, it then turns pretty cold. I mean, this is the global forecast system model we are looking at. Remember, around this time, it is attempting to put some snow down somewhere in the northeast. And all of this depends on where that cold air really decides to set up. But the global forecast system model shows it pushing all the way into the east with some much colder weather in December. Alright, if you are just joining the channel and you have made it this far, you are probably saying, I missed it all. Just take it back to the beginning. It is all in the video. Thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed just over the last couple of weeks. It absolutely blows my mind. If you are brand new, a very big welcome to the channel. But as I always say on the channel, once you are a weather geek, you are always a weather geek, and once you are a meteorologist, you will always be one.